Have you ever noticed how the smallest habits we barely think about can quietly steal our strength? How avoiding one tough conversation, seeking one more comfort, or listening to that inner critic just a little too long slowly chips away at who we could become. We often imagine weakness as something obvious, giving up, being lazy, lacking discipline. But the truth is far more subtle. Weakness hides in the choices we keep justifying, and strength is built in silence, through quiet resistance and conscious living. The Stoics didn't chase power, praise, or perfection. They chased virtue, courage to do what's right, the wisdom to see clearly, and the discipline to rise above their impulses. In their eyes, strength wasn't about muscle or money. It was about mastery of the self. So, before we begin, Massachusetts KE, a promise to yourself. Comment below. I embrace challenges. I grow stronger. Let this be your commitment to face these habits head on, and to walk this Stoic path with clarity and intention. Let's begin. 1. Avoiding problems. Have you ever tried to run away from a problem, thinking that maybe if you just stay silent long enough, it'll fade away on its own? I remember years ago, I had a falling out with a close friend. Words were said in the heat of frustration, some high sand rather than confront the discomfort. I took the easy path. I avoided it. I let time do the talking, or so I thought. I buried the tension beneath business, hoping silence would act as a healer. It didn't. That silence wasn't peaceful. It was noisy. It echoed every what if, every unresolved feeling, and it stayed with me, lingering like a shadow. That's when I came across a simple yet powerful quote by Marcus Aurelius. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Avoiding our problems doesn't eliminate them. It just delays the growth we were meant to gain from facing them. Stoicism doesn't promise a life free of adversity. It teaches us that obstacles are the very path to virtue, that through confrontation, through stepping forward rather than turning away, we uncover strength, Pennsylvania-tience, and resilience. A friend of mine once described his work life like a house full of clutter. Every day he'd walk through the front door, see the mess, feel overwhelmed, and walk right past it. Weeks turned into months. Instead of fixing the chaos, he started spending more time at work or with friends just to avoid facing it. He thought he was maintaining peace by avoiding the problem. But inside, he was anything but peaceful. Eventually, the mess got to him not just physically, but mentally. He told me, "It's not the clutter that broke me. It was the weight of pretending it didn't exist." We face it, quietly, intentionally, not with drama or dread, but with a silent strength. We acknowledge that each challenge is not just a nuisance to survive, but a moment designed to shape us. Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." When you lift weights, it's not the comfort that builds muscle, it's the resistance. Life works the same way. Maybe your problem is a conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's a decision at work, Or maybe it's an inner battle fear, self-doubt, grief. Whatever it is, avoiding it only gives power over you. But here's the Stoic shift. What if the problem itself is your invitation to grow? What if facing it head-on, even just a single, quiet step toward itis, the act of reclaiming your peace? When I finally spoke with that friend, years later, we didn't solve everything in one talk, but I took responsibility. I owned my silence. And with that, the weight lifted. I realized the discomfort I'd been running from was never as painful as the regret of avoidance. So, to you, listening now, what's the thing you've been dodging? The moment you've postponed? Don't fear the problem. Let it be the fire that forges you. Face it not with panic, but with poise. Not with shooting, but with a silent resolve that says, I am ready. Remember, avoidance is the enemy of growth. Confrontation done calmly, Wisconsin-Sealy, and intentionally is where virtue lives. This is not about being fearless. It's about being brave enough to act in spite of fear. 2. Overindulging in material things. It started with a new phone, then a new car, then upgrading to a bigger place, not because I needed it, but because it just felt like the next step. But here's the truth I didn't realize until much later. None of it made me feel more fulfilled. The satisfaction was quick, shallow, and silent. Not the kind of silence that brings peace, but the kind that echoes emptiness. Let me tell you a story, one that's not just mine, but probably yours too. I knew a guy named Eric. Corporate job, 6 figures, downtown apartment with a skyline view. Every few months, there was a new gadget, a new trip, a new flex on social media. But one evening, over coffee, he confessed something that hit me hard. He said, I've got everything I ever wanted, but I feel nothing. That's the danger of overindulging in material things. We keep chasing more, hoping the next purchase will finally quiet that inner hunger. But as the Stoics teach us true, happiness doesn't come from what we own. It comes from WHO. We are. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." That quote slapped me the first time I read it, because I realized we live in a world that rewards craving. Ads whisper to us daily, "You're not enough unless you buy this." The message is silent, but constant, and we absorb it, subconsciously tying our self-worth to stuff. But here's the thing Stoicism teaches us. Simplicity isn't lacking. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, lived humbly. He wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." That's the shift from what more can I get to what can I let go of. Instead of filling our homes, we fill our hearts. Instead of chasing status, we cultivate stillness. And instead of pilling on distractions, we listento the silent wisdom inside. So let's bring it back to you. What's one thing you've been craving lately? A new watch? A designer bag? A car upgrade? Ask yourself not with judgment, but with curiosity. Is this something I truly need, or something I'm using to fill a deeper void? Now, this doesn't mean you have to live like a monk. Stoicism isn't about denying comfort. It's about not being owned by comfort. There's nothing wrong with enjoying nice things. The problem begins when we start believing those things define us. When our peace is disturbed the moment we don't get what we want, or worse, when we get it and still feel empty. So here's the practice. Next time you feel the urge to buy, to upgrade, to accumulate pause, go silent. Breathe. Ask, what am I really seeking right now? Is it connection, security, validation? And then redirect. Invest in what lasts. A deep conversation. A walk with someone you love. A book that feeds your soul. A moment of gratitude. Because in the end, we don't remember the things, we remember the feeling of being fully alive. That can't be bought. That has to be built. So live simply, love deeply, and walk lightly through this world. As Epictetus said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Your richest life isn't stored in a shopping cart, it's stored in the silent strength of your character. 3. Failing to handle negative emotions. We've all had that moment. You get cut off in traffic. Someone says something disrespectful, or maybe it's deeper, something personal, like betrayal or heartbreak. And suddenly, there's this fire inside you. Your chest tightens, your thoughts race, and before you know it, you've said something or done something you wish you hadn't. It's a common story. One that repeats itself in households, offices, and quiet minds all over the world. I remember one night my friend Alex had a huge fight with his partner. Not over something monumental, but over dishes. Yes, dishes. But underneath it, there was resentment, exhaustion, and bottled-up frustration, and when it all came out, it exploded. Afterward, Alex sat in silence, not the peaceful kind, the guilt-ridden, regret-heavy kind of silence. And that's what happens when we don't know how to handle our emotions, especially the negative ones: anger, jealousy, anxiety, sadness. We either explode or we bury them so deep they eat us alive from the inside. But Stoicism offers us another way. You see, the Stoics didn't say, don't feel. They said, master your response. Epictetus wrote, it's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things. Let that sink in. It's not the situation, it's what we tell ourselves about the situation. That means the moment something triggers us, we have a choice. Between the stimulus and our reaction, there's space. And in that silent space, there's power. Power to breathe. Power to pause. Power to choose a different path. Let me give you a real story. Brandon works in sales at a tech company in Austin. After spending an entire week preparing a proposal for a big client, he gets an email from his manager that reads, "This doesn't meet our standards. I expected better." His face flushes. His fingers hit the keyboard, ready to fire back, ready to defend. But something inside him whispers, "Washington, IT." So he steps away, takes a walk. Silent, no distractions, just him and his breath. When he returns, the heat in his chest has cooled. He rereads the message. This time, he sees feedback, not an attack. Instead of lashing out, he writes a calm, professional response, offers a solution. A week later, not only does the client sign, but his manager praises his emotional maturity. That's Stoicism in practice. He didn't suppress his emotion. He saw it. And in that space, he chose how to respond. Now bring it back to your own life. Maybe someone at work disrespected you. Maybe someone ghosted you or misunderstood you or made you feel small. Your first instinct might be to lash out or to go silent, not stoic. Silence. But the cold kind, the emotionally distant kind. But the Stoic path asks something deeper. It asks you to feel and then filter. Acknowledge the anger, then ask, is this worth my peace? Acknowledge the jealousy, then ask, is this a reflection of them or something I need to heal in me? Negative emotions are not the enemy. Mismanaging them is. So here's the practice. When you feel a wave of emotion rise, don't fight it. And don't let it drive, just notice it. Go silent for a moment, breathe, journal it. Talk to a friend, go for a walk, reflect. The Stoics knew that emotions were a part of being human, but they also knew that the ability to rule over your emotions, not be ruled by them, is where freedom begins. Seneca said it beautifully, he who is brave is free. And bravery doesn't mean feeling nothing. It means standing in the storm of your emotions, silent but steady, and saying, I choose how I respond. So next time you feel that fire rising inside, pause. Let the silence speak before your anger does. Let wisdom rise before your ego reacts, because that space between feeling and reacting, that's where your true power lives, and in that space, you become unshakable. 4. Not caring about others' well-being. We live in a time where looking out for number one is glorified. Hustle harder, grind in silence, get yours. But here's the thing, when you live like that for too long, always pushing, Alabama ways taking, Nebraska connecting, you start to feel hollow. I once met a man named Derek. He worked in finance, Wall Street sharp, 6-figure salary, fast cars, fine suits. On the outside, he had everything, but inside, he was running on fumes. One night, he shared something that stuck with me. He said, I've spent the last 10 years building my life like a fortress, but now I'm the only one inside. You see, Derek had spent so long chasing his own success that he forgot the people around him. He stepped over colleagues, ignored friends, and distanced himself from his family. And now, even with all his wins, he felt like he lost. It reminded me of something Marcus Aurelius once wrote. What injures the hive injures the bee. Stoicism isn't about isolation. It's about contribution. Because when you harm your community or simply ignore it, you're not just hurting others, you're hurting yourself. Humans are social creatures. That's not philosophy, that's biology. We're wired to connect, to support, to belong. And when we turn our backs on that, When we stop caring about others' well-being, we start to drift away from purpose, away from joy, away from what it means to be truly human. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be a saint. It means you recognize the simple truth. We're all connected, and what we do for others, we also do for ourselves. There's power in a kind word, in checking in listening without trying to fix, in being the person who doesn't just take up space but helps others breathe easier. I remember another story, a young woman named Bri who worked at a grocery store near my place. Every morning, she would greet each customer with genuine warmth, not forced, not robotic real kindness. I once asked her why she was always so upbeat. She smiled and said, "I figured, maybe someone walks in today, and I'm the only person who sees them, really sees them." That stuck with me. She wasn't trying to change the world. She was just being a better part of it. And in doing so, she gave more to her community than any paycheck could reflect. Now think about your own life. Is there someone you've been too busy to check in on? A coworker who's been struggling silently? A neighbor who lives alone? Sometimes we stay silent when someone needs us to speak. Sometimes we keep our heads down when we should be lifting others up. But the Stoics remind us that real strength doesn't come from standing alone. It comes from standing together. Seneca wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness. And that kindness doesn't just heal others, it heals you. Because when you serve, you grow. When you care, you connect. When you lift someone else, you rise with them." So next time you feel tempted to withdraw, to isolate, or to stay in your own lane, pause. Be the person who notices, who helps, who gives without needing applause. Because in the end, what makes a life rich isn't what you earn, it's who you help along the way. And in that, the Stoic path is clear. Care for the hive, and the bee will thrive. 5. Negative self-talk. Let's be honest. Some of the most brutal things ever said to you probably came from your own mind. You mess up at work, and the voice kicks in. "You're such an idiot." You try something new and fail. Of course you failed, you always do. You look in the mirror and hear, "Not good enough, not yet, maybe never." And the worst part, no one else hears it. The insults are silent, buried beneath a smile, hidden in your daily routine. But they echo loudly. This is what negative self-talk looks like, and almost all of us go through it. It doesn't matter how strong or successful you seem, if you're human, you've likely battled that internal critic. I remember my friend Jenna, brilliant artist. One of those people who can bring a blank canvas to life, but she could never bring herself to share her work publicly. Every time someone complimented her art, she'd deflect. "It's nothing. I just got lucky. It's not as good as it looks." She once told me, "I'm not afraid people won't like it. I'm afraid they will, and I still won't feel good enough." Her struggle wasn't with the world, it was with herself. Now, Stoicism doesn't pretend those voices don't exist, but it does teach us how to meet them. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled over an empire and battled his own demons, once wrote, "You have power over your not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the essence. We can't always control the voice that whispers, but we can control how we answer. Instead of allowing negative thoughts to spiral, Stoicism invites us to step back, to become an observer, to ask, is this helpful? Is true? Because most of the time, it's not. Stoicism also teaches that harsh self-criticism doesn't make you stronger, it weakens your spirit. It traps you in fear instead of fueling growth. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Apply that to your own inner dialogue. If you fail, how will you respond? Will you tear yourself down? Or will you learn, grow, and move forward? Let's take a more everyday example. Imagine you botch a presentation at work. You fumble your words. Your slides glitch. You leave the room feeling humiliated. Now here comes the internal monologue. You're useless. Why can't you get it together? But wait, what would a Stoic say? Pause. Go silent for a moment. Then respond with clarity, not cruelty. I struggled today. That's true. But I prepared. I showed up. And now I know what to improve. That's the Stoic response. 1. Honest. Grounded. But not punishing. It's like training a muscle. Every time you catch yourself in negative self-talk and choose a more constructive path, you grow, you build resilience. You practice self-acceptance not to avoid improvement, but to make space for it. Seneca once wrote, "No man was ever wise by chance. Wisdom is built." And part of that wisdom is knowing how to talk to yourself with both truth and kindness. So next time that inner voice turns sharp, don't ignore it. Don't believe it blindly either. Challenge it. Reframe it. Speak to yourself like someone you actually care about. Because you should. Your thoughts are not just reflections, they're directions. They guide how you feel, how you act, and who you become. And when you go silent, not to suppress, but to reflect, you'll find that the storm often quiets. In that silence, there's room for a new voice to rise. One that says, you're learning, you're growing, and you're still on the path. That's Stoicism in action. Not perfection, but progress. 6. Procrastination. You know that feeling. The deadline is looming. The email still hasn't been written. The GYM bag sits by the door for the 3rd day in a row. And yet, you scroll, you watch. You say, I'll get to it later. But later never comes. And that quiet guilt to build. You feel stuck, frustrated with yourself, wondering why you can't just do the thing even when you know exactly what needs to be done. This right here is procrastination. It's not laziness. It's avoidance. And often, it comes not from a lack of discipline, but from fear of failure, fear of imperfection, or even fear of success. I remember a guy I met at a writing workshop, let's call him Mike. Talented, insightful, great ideas. He had a book in his head for years, but every time he sat down to write, he'd suddenly remember the laundry, or decide to clean the kitchen, or fall down a YouTube rabbit hole. When he finally admitted it out loud, he said, "I think deep down, I'm scared that if I actually finish it, maybe it won't be any good." That fear kept him frozen. And while he waited for the perfect moment, time kept moving. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, saw this clearly. He wrote, "While we wait for life to pass, life passes." And that's the truth. Every hour we postpone, every task we avoid, we're not just delaying work, we're delaying life. So how do we break free? The Stoics believed in action, not just thinking about doing but doing. Not in massive leaps, but in small, deliberate steps. The trick they taught was to stop overthinking, because in the silent spaces where we hesitate, fear grows louder. That's where Stoicism steps in, not to shame you for procrastinating, but to give you tools to move forward. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That's clarity followed action, not perfection, not performance, just the next step. So let's get practical. Imagine you've got a huge presentation to prepare. Instead of staring at a blank screen and spiraling, break it down. Today, just create the outline. Tomorrow, add bullet points. The next day, practice your intro. It's not about doing it all, no, it's about starting. And here's the key. Momentum builds confidence. Each small step reminds your brain, "I'm capable." And that silent shift from stuck to moving changes everything. Another way to apply Stoic thought: set a timer. Tell yourself, "I'll do this for just 5 minutes." That simple agreement can override the mental resistance. Most times, you'll keep going. Marcus Aurelius himself, "Do what nature demands. Get to work like a soldier, like a bee, like a human being." He didn't wait for motivation. He trusted discipline. Not in a harsh way, but in a steady, grounded way. So, what can you do right now? Not tomorrow, not later, but in this moment? Maybe it's writing the first sentence of that email. Maybe it's standing up and stretching. Maybe it's picking up the phone you've been avoiding. Whatever it is, begin. Because once you do, the fog lifts, the pressure fades, and your self-respect returns. Procrastination thrives in silence, but so does clarity. So the next time you feel stuck, go silent, not to delay, but to breathe, to center yourself. And then act, because life isn't waiting, and neither should you. 7. Dwelling on past mistakes. There's a moment that plays on repeat in your mind. Maybe it was something you said or didn't say. Maybe it was a decision you made, an opportunity missed, a job left too soon, a relationship that crumbled. And even though it's behind you, it still lives in your head, whispering doubts when the world goes silent. That's the trap. of dwelling on past mistakes. I once met a man named Rob at a community workshop. He'd left a high-paying job years ago in a moment of anger, thought he'd find something better right away, but months turned into years, and things didn't go as planned. Every time he tried to move forward, his mind dragged him backward. "I blew it," he'd say. "I ruined my life." It was as if he couldn't forgive the man he used to be. Maybe you've been there too. And the truth is, we all mess up. We all fall short. But here's what the Stoics understood: mistakes do not define us. What defines us is what we choose to do. Next, Marcus Aurelius put it clearly: when you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. He didn't say to regret. He didn't say to replay your worst moments. He said to live. Dwelling on mistakes is like carrying a backpack full of rock-shivi, useless and self-imposed. The Stoics didn't believe in ignoring the past. No, they believed in learning from it. Let's take a real-life example. Imagine you lost a friendship because of your own pride or words you regret. You think about it constantly, what you should have said, how things could have been different. That thought loop, that's dwelling. And it serves no one, not them, not you. But now imagine this. You take a silent moment to reflect, to own your part, to forgive yourself, and then you take action. Maybe you reach out. Or maybe, if that chapter's closed, you simply choose to become someone who listens more, who speaks with more care. That's Stoicism in motion. That's growth. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." You can't rewrite the past. Write your next page. And that's where your power lies, not in regret, but in responsibility. So what does this look like in practice? Next time that memory resurfaces, the one that brings shame or pain, pause. Let it come. Let it speak. And then respond with wisdom. Say, what can I learn? How can I improve? Who do I want to be from this point forward? This shift doesn't erase the mistake. It transforms it into a teacher. And here's something else. Talk to yourself like you would a close friend. You wouldn't shame them forever for something they did years ago. You'd guide them gently toward a better path. Do the same for yourself, because the past only has power if you keep feeding it. Go silent. Listen, then act. You are not your worst day. You are the person who rose from it. 8. Seeking external validation. We all know the feeling. You post something online, maybe a picture, a thought, or a personal milestone, and then you wait. You refresh the page, watching for likes, hearts, or clapping hands. And when they don't come, that silent void feels louder than any insult. This is the trap of seeking external validation. I want to tell you about someone I knew, Kevin, a young professional climbing the corporate ladder. Every success he had, he needed someone to notice. If no one complimented his work, it felt like it didn't matter. He was constantly chasing applause, always looking over his shoulder, wondering, did they see that? Did they like that? Eventually, it broke him. He started hesitating, second-guessing, and overthinking every move. The fear of not being liked became greater than the desire to grow. Now, maybe Kevin's story sounds familiar to you. Maybe it's not about your job, maybe it's about how you look, how you speak, what you wear, or even the car you drive. Maybe your self-worth feels like it lives in someone else's hands. That's where Stoicism walks in with a torch. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, once said, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." Think about that for a moment. Why do we place our peace in the hands of others? Why do we give strangers the keys to our confidence? The Stoics believed that the only opinion that truly matters is your own, and only when it's grounded in reason, virtue, and clarity. They taught that true confidence doesn't come from applause. It comes from alignment, when your actions match your values. Let me put it another way. Imagine a musician who plays only to please the crowd. Every note depends on their mood. One day they love him, the next they don't. He's always adjusting, always anxious. Now, imagine another musician who plays from the soul, not for praise but from purpose. The second one may not get as much attention, but he's free. Which one would you rather be? Here's what Epictetus advised. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Harsh? Maybe. But what he meant is powerful. The moment you stop caring what others think, you start becoming who you truly are. This doesn't mean we ignore feedback or live in isolation, but it does mean we stop needing validation like oxygen. So how do we apply this today? First, define your own values. What matters to you? Integrity, growth, honesty. Write those down and live by them, especially when no one's watching. Second, practice being silent when your ego wants praise. Try doing something good without posting it, saying it, or hinting at it. Just let the act speak for itself. The silence, that's where the real growth happens. And third, reflect. When you feel anxious about someone's opinion, ask, what does their approval actually change? Will it make you better or just more dependent? Here's the truth. Confidence doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being real. From looking in the mirror and saying, I know who I am. I'm doing what's right. That's enough. So next time you find yourself fishing for compliments, remember validation is a moving target, but virtue, that's a foundation. Live by your own compass, and let the world watch in silent wonder. 9. Struggling with change. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, I met someone named Rachel. She had worked the same job for almost 12 years, same cubicle, same routine, same 20-minute drive to work every morning with the same silent cup of coffee. Life was predictable, and to her, predictable meant safe. But then, things changed. The company downsized. Her role was eliminated overnight. One morning, she was a steady employee. By lunchtime, she was updating her resume with shaky hands. She didn't just lose a job, she lost her sense of identity, her rhythm, her comfort zone. And she panicked. Now, pause for a second. Maybe you've been there. Maybe it wasn't a job, but a relationship that ended, or a move across the country. Or maybe your body changed, your health changed, or your dreams shifted without asking for permission. Change is one of life's guarantees, and yet we resist it like it's a threat. But here's where Stoicism offers a lifeline. Epictetus, the former slave turned Stoic philosopher, once said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." In other words, it's not the change itself, it's our fear of what that change means. Let's go back to Rachel. At first, she spiraled, but after a few months filled with discomfort and doubt, she began to reflect. She realized she had been stuck in a loop of quiet dissatisfaction for years. The job she thought she needed had actually been holding her back. Losing it forced her to discover passions she had silenced: creativity, writing, even launching her own online business. She didn't just bounce back, she transformed. And that's the beauty of change, when we stop resisting and start embracing. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." So how do we, as Stoics, meet change, not with panic but with purpose? First, we accept that everything is in motion. Life is like a river, it flows, bends, sometimes crashes. Trying to stop change is like trying to dam a river with your bare hands. But learning to swim with the current, that's where strength lies. Second, we practice amor fatith, love of fate. It's not enough to tolerate change. Stoicism teaches us to welcome it, to see it as part of the larger order of nature. The Stoic doesn't say, "Why is this happening to me?" but rather, "How can I grow from this?" Third, we stay silent long enough to hear our deeper voice. When everything around us shifts, it's tempting to fill the space with noise, distractions, blame, overthinking. But silence allows clarity to emerge. In the stillness, we can ask, "What is this moment teaching me?" So here's something you can try. Think of a recent change, big or small, that shook you. Instead of judging it, write down 3 possible gifts it may hold. Not because it's easy, but because perspective is power. If you're someone who fears the unknown, remember this: change is not the enemy. Stagnation is. And while the world outside of us is constantly shifting, the Stoic grounds themselves in what cannot be taken or reason, our virtue, our response. As Marcus Aurelius said, "Observe always that everything is the result of change, and get used to thinking that there is nothing nature loves so well as to change existing forms and to make new ones like them." So when life shifts beneath your feet, don't cling to what was. Stand tall. Stay silent. Then take the next step with intention. Change is not the end, it's often the beginning of your strongest self. Live by your own compass, and let the world watch in silent wonder. 10. Overvaluing comfort and ease. Let's begin with a story that might feel familiar. A man named David lived a life many would envy. A stable 9to-5, a cozy apartment, food delivered with a tap, and weekends spent binge-watching shows. He wasn't rich, but he was comfortable. He didn't struggle, didn't risk, and didn't stretch himself. Life was easy, but over time, something started to gnaw at him, not loudly, silently. A quiet dissatisfaction crept in like a shadow in the room he didn't notice until it stayed too long. He couldn't quite name it, but it followed him. On the commute, in conversations, even in the middle of his favorite show, it was the voice asking, "Is this all there is? Now pause." Have you ever felt like that? Safe, but uninspired, like you're not really living, just existing? That's what happens when we start overvaluing comfort and ease. We choose the path of least resistance, hoping it will lead to peace. But instead, we often end up feeling empty. And here's the Stoic truth: comfort is not the goal of life, growth is. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. If we avoid hardship, we avoid strength. If we dodge struggle, we dodge growth." Let's go back to David. One day, he decided to shake things up. He signed up for a local hiking group, just a few hours on a trail, something he hadn't done since college. It wasn't extreme, but it was uncomfortable. His legs hurt. He had to talk to strangers, and there was no signal on the Mountaino Netflix to numb the moment. But at the end of that hike, something inside him changed. He felt alive. That spark, the one dulled by comfort, flickered back on. That's because growth doesn't live in the familiar. It waits just beyond the edge of it. The Stoics believed in voluntarily embracing discomfort, cold showers, sleeping on the floor, fasting. These weren't acts of punishment. They were practices to remind themselves, I can endure. I don't need comfort to be at peace. You see, modern life makes it dangerously easy to avoid struggle. One-click shopping, food on demand, notifications to distract us. We're surrounded by soft cushions, but here's the warning Stoicism offers. Comfort is silent, and so is decay. That's why Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Comfort tells us to stay in bed a little longer, but strength whispers, get up, move, begin. Here's a practical example for you. Think about something you've wanted to do but haven't. Maybe it's starting a fitness habit. Maybe it's public speaking, or launching that side project. What stopped you? Was it really fear, or was it the desire to stay comfortable? What if you chose the harder path on purpose? Next time you face a fork between easy and meaningful, remember this. Stoicism doesn't promise a painless life. It promises a purposeful one. A life built on the foundation of effort, discipline, and the courage to grow. The Stoic doesn't chase comfort, they chase character. So, take the cold shower. Have the hard conversation. Wake up a little earlier. Do the thing that challenges you, not because it's pleasant, but because it's worth it. Let's end with this reminder from Epictetus. The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it. Ease may keep you safe, but challenge will make you strong. And if ever you feel uncertain, Sit in that silent space, breathe, and choose growth anyway. Life is ever-changing, filled with challenges, distractions, and the constant pull of comfort. But the Stoic does not seek the easy path. They seek growth. They don't run from mistakes. They don't delay action, and they don't wait for applause. They train themselves in silence day by day, choice by choice. Remember the words of Marcus Aurelius: "Rise up as if you were made to do this." Your journey doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It begins within. It is built through discipline, Colorado urge, and stillness. And it moves forward not with noisy, with purpose, and with the silent strength of a Stoic.